3FM 927 on Facebook, also live across the country on 3news.com and our various affiliates across the country. Coming up this evening on Hot Edition, Majority Caucus pleads with the minority leadership to rescind its decision not to approve any of the newly appointed ministerial nominees. Details shortly. We'll cross over to Parliament as well. We're updating you on the vetting currently ongoing. We understand that the minister designate to replace the sacked that's minister in charge of finance at the presidency is currently before the Appointments Committee of Parliament. Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam answering questions from members of the Appointments Committee of Parliament to replace Charles Eduboahen. Stay with us. We'll give you details of what's happening in Parliament shortly. By the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, to declare a UN Level 1 emergency to help Ghana prepare adequately for influx of Burkinabe refugees with no signs of a slowdown in the jihadist attacks. Stay with us. We'll give you updates on this rather worrying development, which some security analysts say is a potent security threat to Ghana. Stay with us. We're getting to business.
In business, total value of new bonds is 87.7 billion cedis higher than the initial 82.9 billion cedis announced. We'll tell you what accounts for the difference.
Juliana Menu Afel will be joining us later with all the news in the world of business. Also, we'll tell you how the latest downgrade by Fitch would impact or has impacted on the economy and also Ghana's own international prospects. Stay with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. I am Alfred. Ocansey. Welcome. Let's get into the details now. The majority in Parliament is pleading with the NDC Minority Caucus to rescind their decision not to approve the president's ministerial nominees. The minority had served notice not to approve the nominees over what they describe as economic hardship amid calls for President Akufo-Addo to prune down the size of his government. Majority Chief Whip Frank Anodompre says despite having numbers on their side to defeat the minority if the matter comes down to a vote in Parliament, they preferred a consensus on the approval of the nominees and thus called on the minority to reconsider their earlier stance on partaking in the vetting but not in the approval of the nominees. Take a listen to the Majority Chief Whip just a few minutes ago addressing the press in Parliament.
I just want our colleagues to understand that for the sake of the unity and the desire for us to forge a working relationship, and this is their major decision, major in terms of the fact that, okay, since they come into leadership, this is the first time, more or less, they are going to make such a significant decision that they should temper, so-called temper justice with mercy. That is not the right expression to use in this context, because I don't see the relevance of this, but I'm just saying it that they should just let's go, support the nominees, let's pass them. Primarily, all these nominees, the Honorable Brian, the Honorable Katie Hammond, Honorable Obi Amwa, the Honorable Stephen Amwa, they are all colleagues. They are all our colleagues. And in this house, we have this convention that if one of our own is nominated, a privilege to be nominated, we rally around one another to get them endorsed, especially in the case that there is no criminal committer of any crime. It will not be injurious if they so decide to support the decision. I'm just appealing to them, for them to remember that today will be a very significant day in our body politics. That once upon a time, nomination from the presidency came, and all they said ab initio was that a no, 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 without even listening to them. For me, it's a significant statement, and will re-echo into the future. I work with Kwame Abuja, who is my colleague as a ranking, the former ranking for roads. and the minority chief whip now. Many occasions when the Muntaka is unable to show up, Kwame comes in instead. I know him closely. I know how dedicated he is. I know how patriotic he is. I also know the Arrowhead at Forsen so well. And I pray what I'm going to say, people will not misconstrue this. Atu Forsen has been one of the most patriotic members on the other side. I served fleetingly on the finance committee before I had to give way to somebody. This is a man who, probably because of his stint at the finance ministry, he can appreciate well when it comes to revenue matters, when it comes to governance.
So that's Frank Anodompre, who is a majority chief whip in Parliament, earlier in Parliament today, pleading with the minority group in Parliament to stand down on their earlier decision not to take part in the approval of the ministerial nominees who are currently going through vetting at the Appointments Committee of Parliament. Our parliamentary correspondent Komla Kluche is joining us on the telephone. Komla, thank you. You sat through this press conference minutes ago. Now, has there been any reaction whatsoever from the minority that this plea coming from the majority has fallen on listening ears?
Well, the deputy minority leader, Emmanuel Ama Kufibua, he actually had a press conference earlier than this particular one. In fact, he was responding directly to Alexander Afenyo-Markin's stance yesterday, saying that the position of the minority is not grounded in law, and that he feels that what they have done is actually to stampede the work of the government. Amakofi Boa had been speaking to this matter, and he says that, number one, he is actually not going to descend, and these are his own words, he's not going to descend into the gutters with Alexander Afenyo-Markin, and that they think almost every other time everything should be about legalese, it should be about the law, and all of that. That is what the problem of the country is, and that he is daring him that if he ever gets the nod or gets spotted by the president and he is nominated to be a minister, they are waiting for him to come before them, for him to, for want of a better word, smell the coffee. But I'm not done prayer. I mean, after he spoke, I did ask him further on that, what is your fear if you have the numbers at your disposal? You have 137, they have 136. Why should you be worried about it? It makes the point that it is not all the time that they can be using numbers to be beating their colleagues. In fact, it makes the assertion that at every other time it's about numbers, and they keep pushing their colleagues to the wall. When they strike, they possibly may not be able to take it. Invariably, what he is trying to say is that it is not too good to always use the numbers to defeat their colleagues. They think that they should build a better consensus, come together with this. Now, what this means actually also is that there's a certain fear amongst the majority. If you look at the composition of the committee as we speak now, in the past, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa withdrew from the committee, and there was that vacant slot. As we speak, the numbers are even. So we have the majority MPs to be 12, the minority MPs are 13, with the chairman having the casting vote of just one, making it 13 because he's an MP. What it means is that if the minority is going to subject all of these ministers or these nominees who are going through the vetting to strict proof and also some vigorous tests at the committee, they are even likely to lose it, because once there's a tie, it means that they'll be losing it. So it's quite dicey. And also the fact that when it even comes to the floor, I mean, the trauma and the torture alone that these nominees are going to be going through knowing or not knowing their fate because it's going to be secret ballots. That is what Frank Anodombre is trying to avoid by trying to attend the olive branch. I put to him also why they are not meeting their side of the bargain where they talk about burden sharing and also reduction in the government or the number of appointees. He makes the point also that, well, they believe that the calls are justified in as much as it's not just coming from the minority side. They expect that the president will do some further consultation on this matter and would be able to take a decision that will be in the best interest of the country. But his plea to the minority is that they should back down on the issue of the rejection and block they are giving to these people, and that they should come and work together, all in the interest of the state.
Kamala, thank you so much for this update. And I know you're there and also updating us on what's happening on the Appointments Committee. Kamala Kluche is our Chief Parliamentary Affairs Correspondent, giving us updates of what's happening in Parliament. And as you've been hearing now, the majority in Parliament have now been pleading with the minority group to rescind or stand down their decision not to take part in the approval of the ministerial nominees, but they are currently taking part in the vetting of the nominees. Frank Anodombre, who is the majority chief whip, has been addressing the press on this matter. But earlier today, Deputy Trade Minister designate Dr. Stephen Amoah responded to whether he will refuse his appointment to be minister as a contribution to reduce government expenditure. And this has been caused by many, not just the minority, but many people, that government should consider cutting down its size to also reduce expenditure. This is the response of Dr. Stephen Amoah at the vetting committee earlier today.
Can you agree with me that the government, even though they are increasing taxes or increasing revenue through the introduction of taxes, needs to cut down on expenditure, since expenditure has gone up by 82 billion Ghana cedis?
I agree with you, sir. Chairman, thank you.
So will you sacrifice your salary to reduce that expenditure if I'm asked upon?
Chairman, I think I said something here. My knowledgeable Dr. Atufosin and I, the only difference is the height. So the way we are brothers, if he sees me on the corridor, he says, brother, let's cut, and he cuts his, I'll cut mine.
Can you consider rejecting or refusing the appointment of the president as a contribution to Ghana's current problem?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not a lawyer, but I know that Article 78 mandates the president with approval of the parliament to do as such. I don't think if I'm asked to serve this country, I'll deny the good people of Inshiaeso and this country by doing that. Thank you, sir.
That's Dr. Stephen Amoah, Deputy Minister of Trade designate and a member of Parliament for the Inshiaeso constituency, answering the question on whether or not he is going to turn down his appointment in a bid to help reduce government expenditure. He says Dr. Kessler 214 should also be ready to cut down on his expenditure. But a lot is happening in Parliament, as a matter of fact. Dr. Rashid Draman is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. He's joining us on the telephone. Dr. Draman, thank you so much for your time on Hot Edition. Now, we've just been hearing the Majority Chief Whip, Frank Anodombre, literally pleading with the minority to rescind their decision not to partake in the approval of these ministerial nominees, but they are taking part as we speak in the vetting. Now, will this plea, considering the position of the party, the influence of the party on the minority, will this plea make any difference?
Alfred, I'm not too sure. If you remember, one of the first tests that the minority group failed in this 8th parliament was when it came to the approval of first set of ministers. After they raised all kinds of issues, they went ahead and approved some of those ministers, and it came back to bite them. they had almost like a revolt from their base. Given what is happening, given the fact that the previous group, that is the leadership group of the minority, carried that blame even up to the point where they were removed. There were some who were still referring to that first test that they failed at. I think, given that, and given the fact that, a lot of noise was made about this new leadership and the fact that they are coming to do things differently, and given also the fact that many claim that they have very good close ties with the new leadership of the party, I doubt if the plea from the minority would make any difference. And Alfred, the plea from the majority, let me state that I have always not been too pleased when we have the party headquarters, whether the NPP or the NDC, trying to interfere in the work of members of parliament. It's almost like dictating how members of parliament should behave. We should be calling the shots, we the citizens that elected them and so on. So I've never been a supporter of those kinds of interferences. But on this occasion, looking at what is happening in our country and then looking at what is happening around the continent, we see Malawi and other places, all the governments are tightening their belts and reducing the size, reducing the number of ministers and so on. On this occasion, I think I support the call from the party headquarters that rather than an increase in the number of ministers, I think at this point in our history, Alfred, we need seriously a downsizing of the number of our ministers. I go around quite a bit around the continent, and each time I meet people in different parliaments, they ask me whether it's a joke that Ghana has more than 100 ministers. I mean, they don't believe it, Alfred. And the fact that we are a good example of a democracy and so on, and the kind of leadership that we provide in that space on this continent, we are becoming a laughing stock.
But, Doctor, in fact, Frank Anodom made the point that with or without the cooperation and support of the minority, when it comes down to numbers, they're still going to have these ministerial nominees approved. But then again, he wants to go on the path of consensus building. I mean, so in the end, if it comes to the votes, the numbers, it's still going to be a numbers game, and then consensus will be defeated. The majority will have their way, is it not?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, they will have their way. But they should remember, I think it's almost like Ghanaians have a tally sheet that right now everybody is keeping and marking every action of every politician, so that on the D-Day, those are the things that are going to inform how people decide. So they shouldn't forget about that. I think that their actions or inactions, they would come when both parties would have to answer for those. And so whether they have the numbers or not, I think it's not just the NDC that is calling for downsizing and reducing the cost of running government. I think the call is right out there on the street, Alfred. So I think perhaps at this point there is some serious consideration that has to be given to this matter. We cannot all be told to tighten our belts, and then, I mean, government continues to run as if there is no problem. If you remember, a few days ago, I watched one of the pensioners who was at the Ministry of Finance picketing, and he said something that really made me quite sad. He said they've been sitting there all day, and there was a vehicle for a Minister of State that was running with the air conditioner and the engine on for a very long time and there was nobody in it, waiting for a minister of state. And he asked the question, at whose cost? And these are the costs that the ordinary Ghanaian has to bear. And so if we are called to do all these things, I think the government should, even if it's symbolic, should show some example of the fact that really times are hard and there's a need to at least cut the cost of how we do things.
Dr. Rashid Rahman, very quickly and briefly, if it comes down to the numbers and consensus is sacrificed, what would be the possible impact of that outcome on Parliament's own workings in the coming days and months?
Well, I think, no group should be short-sighted, because at the end of the day, both sides, need one another. There are a number of bills that are going to come. They are human beings. We can wake up, as we've been saying since day one of this 8th Parliament. We can wake up, critical bills are before the House. The government needs the support of the minority side, and the numbers are not there. And then you start talking about consensus at that time. Nobody's going to listen. So even if they are going to go that route, I think the call by the majority chief whip is a call in the right direction. But don't mix that with calling the bluff of the other side, because otherwise then it defeats the purpose of your plea.
Dr. Rashid Rahman, thank you so much for your thoughts on this, and we'll see how things play out in the coming days in Parliament. And Dr. Rashid Rahman is the Executive Director of the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs there. Agreeing with a number of you, many of you who have been sending us messages here about this particular development in Parliament, and the minority have indicated they are not going to change their stance on their decision not to take part in the approval of the ministerial nominees. Now, let's go to Parliament right now, and the former Deputy Minister of Energy, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, Member of Parliament for the Karaga constituency, is currently before the Appointments Committee of Parliament, and he has been reassigned as Deputy Minister to replace Charles Eduboahin, who was sacked as a Minister of State at the Ministry of Finance. Let's cross over now to the Appointments Committee of Parliament.
Developments in Tamale, where I was the mayor. That was how my relationship with him started. And so in future, we may be looking at that possibility in order to insulate our over-reliance on government finances for the development of metropolitan and district assemblies. But more bonds. But if you have municipal bonds, you can do that relying on the back of revenue generated by the assemblies. The assemblies do a lot of income, IGF, income generation. The assemblies get revenue from different sources apart from what the government allocates to them. And so you can do a municipal bond against those revenue. Also, you can do a municipal bond for a project that will generate revenue to pay for the bond. And so these are all opportunities that we could explore. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, the bonds, everybody on the table got excited because I think there's fatigue and people are becoming a bit risk averse after the ecosystem of bonds that have been issued by the Ministry of Finance, I think have got a bit of a shake-up. So, so my next question is contractors' payments. Contractors' payments. I think over the years, there are a lot of uncompleted projects that are dotted along the whole landscape of the country. And successive governments come and go and still talk about new projects that they need to award, for reasons best known to the awarding authorities. But yet, the country is losing so much with a lot of projects that are uncompleted, and also payments that are not made on time. And so basic project management principles of projects being able to be carried out with the right quality, on time and all that, are almost thrown to the wind. What can the Ministry of Finance do this time better to be able to ensure that the wastage in the system is minimized? Because I think it comes to a point where it keeps on rolling over and we're not seeing much headway. What would you suggest to your minister?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When projects are delayed, they lead to unnecessary cost overruns. And the fact that the projects are not completed also deprived communities from the benefits of these projects. So it's important that we do projects when we have the resources to complete those projects. What I know the ministry has been doing for some time now is the introduction of the commencement certificate. That you will not be able to start a project unless you have a commencement certificate. Even to award a project, you need a commencement certificate. So that has limited somehow off-budgetary spending on projects. In the past, when ministries are allocated funds, then they start implementing their procurement plans without recourse to whether the money is available or not. But with the introduction of the commencement certificate, that has limited such spending. And I believe we should even deepen that. Also, the gift mix system should be deepened. It is working well, but we can even do better.
So that's what's happening in Parliament as we speak, the Appointments Committee of Parliament. Now, Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam is before the Appointments Committee of Parliament. That question that he is answering now was asked by the Honorable Gisela Akushika Tete Agbotri, who is a member of Parliament for the Ewotu Senya West constituency. She's a member of the Appointments Committee of Parliament, asking the question about bonds and then also payment to contractors who are owed by government. Now, talking about bonds, we've just received a statement from the Finance Ministry. The government has announced the final principal amounts of new bonds in the settlement of the domestic debt exchange program. Now, the Finance Ministry in a statement disclosed that in anticipation of the settlement of the domestic debt exchange program on the 21st of February 2023, the government announces the aggregate principal amount of each series of new bonds, which amounts together with the corresponding current, that's the figures on the new bonds, which are set for in Appendix A. In fact, when you go on our page, that's 3FM 92.7 on Facebook, in a bit we're going to put that statement from the Finance Ministry right there on 3FM 92.7 on Facebook shortly. But they give detail of the new amounts for the new bonds, the principal amount for the new bonds, which has just come through. They say that according to the Finance Ministry statement, they are also reproducing in Appendix B, which we're going to put on the page shortly, the exchange consideration ratios by holder category in order to assist eligible holders to calculate the allocation of new bonds they will receive. So if you are a bond holder who did not tender in your bonds as part of the domestic debt exchange program, what this statement from the Finance Ministry is indicating is that there is a calculation method or a formula that you can find in Appendix B attached to the statement that we have, that the exchange consideration ratios by holder category in order to assist eligible holders to calculate the allocation of new bonds they will receive. Also, the statement says that new bonds will be credited to the holder's securities account at the Central Securities Depository, CSD, from which their eligible bonds were tendered. So that is something as well that if you're a bondholder, you should take notice of. Critical information just coming through from the Finance Ministry. The new bonds will be credited to the holder's securities account at the Central Securities Depository from which the eligible bonds were tendered. This is a statement issued by the head of Public Relations Unit at the Finance Ministry. We'll put a copy of that statement shortly on our Facebook page, but this is Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, a statement just coming through from the Finance Ministry. Let's go quickly to issues of security, because the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, is to declare a United Nations Level 1 emergency to help Ghana prepare adequately and put in place a contingency plan regarding effects on happenings in Burkina Faso. The UNHCR, the United Nations Agency for Refugees, has underscored the urgent need for a comprehensive reception strategy to respond to the increasing influx of Burkina Faso refugees to Ghana. According to the Commissioner, the security situation in Burkina Faso has worsened, with displaced citizens seeking asylum in Ghana, particularly in the northern part of the country. Currently, more than 4,000 Burkinabe refugees are in Ghana. Esther Kiragu is country representative of UNHCR.
So it's escalating, evidence of which we have more people coming in than was before. You had the regional ministers, both in Upper West and Upper East, talking about an influx from Burkina Faso between December and January 2003. And so we really must respond in a coordinated way to ensure that we are maintaining peaceful coexistence between both the hosts and those who are coming in.
And the Upper East Regional Minister, Stephen Yakobo, noted that the asylum seekers would be accepted if the needed protocols were followed. He also spoke earlier, giving details of government's response mechanism to the situation in Burkina Faso.
The attacks in Burkina Faso are therefore serious and are dire consequences for the region and the entire country. It is my hope that things get normalized in Burkina Faso to reduce the trend of movement into our region. Also of concern is the escalation of the Boko conflict, which has the tendency of attracting these extremist movements. We are, however, working tirelessly to de-escalate the situation.
As the Upper East Regional Minister, Stephen Yakobo, let's go on to the telephone line and speak to Adib Sani, is a security analyst, has been monitoring the situation with respect to the Burkinabe attacks and its impact on Ghana. Adib, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. Now, you've heard the UNHCR's mechanism they intend to deal with this, pleading with Ghana to prepare. The Upper East Regional Minister is talking about the protocols being fulfilled before Ghana can accept any refugees from Burkina Faso. But do you see any potent intervention to, as it were, address the possible impact of this influx of Burkinabes into Ghana?
Well, obviously, I have been observing happenings with concerns, especially with respect to our lack of preparedness to receive these people, because mostly their movement is unplanned. I mean, when they are attacked, they wake up even in the thick of the night, and whatever it is they are wearing is what they enter Ghana with. All right. So because of its uncoordinated nature, we usually would have to organize the refugee board, the UNHCR, the NADMO, and the rest. They have to organize and get there. But the unfortunate thing is that by the time they get there, the people might have moved to other parts of the country, especially Kumasi. Some would have also moved in with relatives. So we don't even get to debrief. But what I am wondering is what the minister means by how to accept, who to accept. Because under international law, it is illegal to return refugees as and when they come. So when they come, they can now apply for asylum if they feel that their lives might be in danger when they return. Okay, so we need to be careful in order not to endanger people who might be running from danger. But at the same time, it is imperative that we exercise a great deal of tact in identifying that they are really people who need help and not perhaps the jihadists mixing up with them just to have access into the country.
But how can that be done? I mean, are we clothed from what you do know, especially up north, with the right strategy and the modus to be able to detect these persons who may come in the guise of refugees but actually are not and could harm us?
Well, intelligence sharing is key. That is why some of us were very worried about the statements the president made with respect to Wagner mercenaries in Burkina Faso, because we need them. Okay, they are directly fighting the terrorists. They know the terrorists more than we do. We only hear about them on TV and radio and the net, but they are fighting them directly. So if they are able to share intel with us, it helps because we will also be on guard waiting for some of these people who might attempt to cross border into Ghana, and we would know them. All right, based on that intelligence will be given by our Burkinabe counterparts. They would also give us intelligence on the attacks and the most vulnerable, towns and villages that is close to Ghana. So we are also able to manage well, put in place the necessary security arrangements, because at any time such villages or towns can be attacked. So when these people come in, we'll be there waiting for them. We'll do the necessary debriefing, get all their information, including their biometrics, and know where each and every one of them would be. But you don't just make it look like a gate in which people can just, flood in without any checks. That, I must say, is what I am very concerned about.
Adib Sani, thank you so much for your thoughts on Hot Edition tonight. Appreciate it. Adib Sani is security analyst, also sharing his thoughts on the happenings in the northern part of the country with respect to the impact of the influx of Burkinabes as a result of the jihadist attack in this country. This is Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We're also live on Facebook, 3FM 927. Apart from the happenings in Burkina Faso and its impact on northern Ghana, and then also what the United Nations, that's Division for Human Security, has been talking about, and then also the responses from the Upper East Regional Minister. We've been talking to you as well about the happenings in Parliament, giving you a sneak peek of the ongoing vetting of Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, and also the reactions from the majority chief with pleading with the minority group in Parliament to rescind their decision not to participate in the approval of these ministerial nominees. Dr. Rashid Draman and also Komla Kluchi joined us on that. And earlier we got information a high-powered government delegation will visit China later this week to convince authorities there to accept Ghana's proposal for debt cancellation with the Paris Club. It is part of the government's restructuring of its external debt. Ghana is hoping to restructure some $5.7 billion, with China holding a third of it, amounting to $1.7 billion. So that's the updates and what's happening now. Finance Minister Kenneth Friata is leading the delegation, told Svenja Schulze, a German minister, that China has committed to a bilateral negotiation. In view of that, he is hopeful a deal can be reached to enable Ghana to present her case before the International Monetary Fund. And as we got information earlier as well, Menu Afo is standing by with the details in the world of business, where government, Menu, is said to have announced the final principal amounts for the new bonds.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So government has issued its new bonds to investors that participated in the domestic debt exchange program. The issuance, however, showed that the total value of bonds tendered amounted to 87.7 billion cedis instead of the initial 82.9 billion cedis announced during the program's closure. Three business sources say some investors who didn't participate in the debt exchange are now tendering their bonds to be included in the program, and that increased the amount tendered. Three businesses learning that the Finance Ministry is still accepting tendering from individual and institutional bondholders who have decided to join the program. It appears quite strange because the debt exchange program was closed on February 10, 2023, and the government had indicated it would not return to the market until 6 months after the completion of the debt exchange. We'll move away from the debt talk because Executive Director of Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana, Charles Nyaba, says it will not be possible for Ghana to ban importation of onions. Reacting to a call by the Minister of Agriculture designate Brian Echampong for a ban on importation of onions from Niger, Dr. Nyaba said though the minister designate's argument is valid, issues of capacity and the Free Continental Trade Agreement will not make it possible.
Ghana imports more than $100 million worth of onions from Niger annually. This represents more than 43% of all onion produced in that country. The Minister nominee for Food and Agriculture, Brian Echampong, says importing onion from the landlocked nation like Niger is embarrassing and wants it banned.
We have no business. Niger, half desert, half grassland, and we are importing onions from them. And we don't see anything wrong. Honorable Leader, be assured, this embarrassment will be stopped.
But the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana believes such a directive is not feasible if local production capacity is not enhanced. Dr. Charles Nyaba is the Executive Director of the association.
What strategies is it putting in place to ensure that we completely stop importation? Because we can't ban because we are a member of African Free Trade Continental Area. So for banning, it's not possible.
Dr. Nyaba, however, urged the government to increase investment in domestic food production to reduce the huge food import bill.
We cannot be self-sustainable in everything. We need to be able to identify the commodities where we have comparative advantage, ensure that we are self-sufficient and we produce for export. So onions is one commodity, fine, we have the potential to increase production. But looking at the potential areas for onions production, we need to make our farmers competitive.
Away from that, Telecel Group, the new owners of Vodafone Ghana, have pledged to maintain the brand's 3 existing subsidiaries following the successful transfer of Vodafone's 70% shares. In a newly released statement by Telecel, it said operations of Vodafone Ghana and its 3 subsidiaries, National Communication Backbone Company Limited, Vodafone Ghana Mobile Financial Services Limited, and Vodafone Ghana Foundation, will continue operations uninterrupted while embracing exciting new possibilities. Vodafone Group PLC completed the transfer of its shares after successfully obtaining all the necessary regulatory approvals, including the agreements of the government of Ghana as a minority shareholder. On the international front, the U.S. officially hit its $31.4 trillion debt ceiling on January 19, launching a ticket time bomb toward a potentially calamitous debt default. Unable to break the political deadlock in Congress, the Treasury will now take extraordinary measures to ensure the government can pay its bills. The emergency measures are due to expire on January 5, according to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, triggering fears of a nasty fallout for Americans. There's a grim picture of life after debt default. Credit card interest rates, as well as other interest-bearing loans like mortgages and auto loans, are tied into the health of the U.S. economy, which is facing dire straits in its debt default debacle. With the U.S. balance sheet in such a precarious position, retirement could be at risk. And that's how we end the business segment. I'm Meno Afo. Over to you now, Alfred.
Meno, thank you for the detail. You find more on 3news.com. Now, ratings agency Fitch has downgraded Ghana's long-term foreign currency issue default rating to RD, that is restricted default, from C after the country missed the grace period to make a coupon payment of $40.6 million on one of its Euro bonds. Fitch typically does not assign outlooks to sovereign with a rating of CCC plus or below. Fitch also downgraded the rating of the country's $1 billion Euro bond maturing on January 18, 2026 to D from C, and withdrawn its rating. It affirmed all the long-term senior unsecured foreign currency dominated issue ratings at C and withdrawn their ratings. So that obviously portends also another challenge for government and indeed the finance minister as we go on with the path of engaging the external creditors in the coming days. Yao Fosolabe is here with all the details in the world of sports. Yao, what's going on?
Well, coming up in sports, there's still some news on Christian Atsu, because we've been finding out some of the humanitarian works that he's been doing around. We spoke to one of the ex-convicts that he reintegrated into society. We'll be also hearing from the African Games and whether it will be happening or not. And then we'll take you to Liverpool, where tonight Liverpool will take on Real Madrid. But let's start off with the African Games, because the 13th Africa Games has officially been postponed to 2024, with a date yet to be set, as confirmed by the local organizing committee in a presser today. The competition was initially set to be hosted in Accra from the 4th to the 19th of August 2023. The LOC has been directed by the president to present a date for the start of the games by March 5, 2023. Some more stories. And Asamoah Gyan, Sule Muntari, Emmanuel Ajimamedu and Aminu Dramani paid a visit to the Atsu family home earlier today to express their condolences. Asamoah Gyan, Muntari, Ajimamedu played with Atsu at Black Stars level. The day before, the Ayew family, led by the father, Abedi Ayew Pele, visited the family home. Mark Mensah is an ex-convict who Christian Atsu provided for some time back and expressed his sadness upon hearing the news of the former Chelsea man's passing. He said Atsu was a very peaceful person.
He was a peaceful person. He cared so much for the poor and needy. I never thought someone like him would help me. He was a good person. My mom is still crying after she heard the news. I can't believe it.
Or you heard that from Mark Mensah, who is an ex-convict that Christian Atsu provided for to help reintegrate back into society. Now, Real Madrid manager Carlo Ancelotti has stated that star Brazilian forward Vinicius is focused on a Champions League tie against Liverpool amid recent racial abuse. The two teams are set to clash later tonight.
I hope that they are working on this. The people that has to be involved in this. Vinicius is managing really well this moment because he's focused on the game. He loves to play football, and this doesn't affect on the pitch.
Well, that's Carlo Ancelotti. There was Real Madrid boss talking about his forward, Vinicius Jr. Now to Liverpool, where forward Cody Gakpo believes that the team has a strong bond amid recent improvements in their form. The Reds have won 2 matches on the bounce and are looking to make it 3 with Real Madrid.
And we trying to stay together in difficult moments, and I think that's one of the strengths of this team. And from there on, you know that you're gonna win some games. And we won 2 in a row now, and we have to keep working hard and keep improving a lot of things to keep winning the games.
That's Cody Gakpo there. Now, Aston Villa goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez has admitted that it has been difficult adjusting to club football after winning the World Cup in Argentina. Now, he did state, however, that he is fully focused on his club form.
I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink fizzy drinks. But I came back to the UK and I was sleeping 14, 15 hours a night. I was like, wow, I only need 7-8 hours to sleep, you know? And you can see how much adrenaline, how much it cost me to come back. But like I said, I love this club. I wanted to be here as soon as possible. I had to enjoy with my country. But once I was here, I was obviously fully focused on this club. The club gave me everything, and I'm grateful to be here.
That's Emiliano Martinez there, who's the World Cup winning goalkeeper for Argentina and also Aston Villa's goalkeeper. Now, Leeds United have agreed terms with former Watford boss Javi Gracia to replace Jesse Marsch as manager. Marsch was sacked on the 6th of February, but Leeds have faced several setbacks in their hand for a replacement. Gracia, who's 52 years old, took Watford to the FA Cup final in 2019 before managing Valencia and Qatari club Al Sadd. Leeds are 19th in the Premier League and host bottom club Southampton in their next game on Saturday. To our final story, and Egypt midfielder Mohamed El Neni has extended his contract with Arsenal until June 2024. El Neni, the club's longest-serving player, is currently out with a knee injury, and the timescale of his return is unknown. The 30-year-old has played 155 times since joining from Basel in 2016. El Neni last played for the club in the FA Cup third-round tie against Oxford, in January, scoring the opening goal in a 3-0 victory. My name is Yao Fusulabi, and that's all the sports here on Hot Edition. We're back with some more later. Over to you, Alfred.
Yo, thank you. I mean, that's a very impactful Christian Achu story right there, is it not? And it never ends. We keep hearing every day.
There's an extended version of this on News 360, so
great stuff.
You might want to catch stuff.
It's going to be on 3 Sports as well.
It's going to be everywhere. And so
great stuff. Thank you so much. And Accra High Court has dismissed contempt charges against North Tongue Member of Parliament Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, ruling that the Member of Parliament was not served with any contempt procedure, as was suggested. The charges were brought against him by Secretary of the Board of Trustees of the National Cathedral, Kwabena Edujemfi, alias Victor Kusi Boateng, asking the court to bar the Member of Parliament from using his name and disclosing personal details about him. But the court today noted that records available before it does not suggest that the Member of Parliament was served properly. NDC General Secretary Fifi Fiavi Kwete was amongst the scores of party faithful and constituents who thronged the court in solidarity with the Member of Parliament.
Indicate that the NDC as a party from the national to the region to Ketu and North Town is fully behind our comrade, our brother, Honorable Samuel. To say that the party is not declared at all, that there's nothing that the forces that are against the truth can do to discourage him or to make him feel that what he's doing is not the right thing. And we believe the cause he's fighting is the cause of truth, the cause of transparency, and there's nothing that can be done to discourage him. And the party stands fully 100% behind him.
A Deputy Majority Leader, Amakofibua Emmanuel, was also present in court, and this was what he had to say.
We should have seen Mr. Adujemfi in court, but instead, you know who was in court? The man who was fighting for the right thing for Ghana, Okudzeto-Ablakwa. And that is why you are all here. That is why you see all the crowd here. The people of Ghana are committed and support all the right things he's fighting for. The minority in parliament stands strongly behind him. And we want to make it clear. Today we went to court, it was obvious that the people who took us to court are running away from their own application. And this is really victory for the people of Ghana. What it is that we are very clear in our mind.
That's a Deputy Majority Leader, Emmanuel Amakofibua. And Akofa is standing by with the news in the world of entertainment. What's going on, Akofa?
Hi, Alfred. Now, coming up in entertainment tonight, Grammy-nominated producer Nabi in an interview talks about gaps in the Ghanaian music industry. And on the international scene, Maverick City Music terms Wizkid win on first night of virtual ceremonies at the NAACP Image Awards 2023. Grateful for your time. Now the details. Ghana's Edgar Nabenyi Panford, who worked wonders on Kanye West's 14-track on the Donda album, album, had a few things to say about the pitfalls in the Ghanaian music industry. He spoke to Bellamundi from his studio, detailing the inspiration for organizing a workshop for Ghanaian musicians. He noted that receiving a Grammy nomination for his work on Kanye West's album was a huge milestone in his career. He said, as soon as I was nominated, the first thing I wanted to do was figure out how I can be of service to build the music scene out there and see how I can elevate the sound. Speaking further, he said the Ghanaian music industry continues to thrive, but some areas need polishing. Nabenyi brought top songwriters from the United States in Ghana to facilitate cultural exchange and a writing camp to tackle the deficiencies in the industry. He noted Kofi Jama, Kwamena MP, Fameye, Stoneboy, and Rocky Dawuni as participants. After about 14 years in the industry, Nabenyi has worked with top guns, including Kanye West, Drake, Nas, Rocky Dawuni, The Game, and a host of others. And now onto the international scene. Maverick City Music, Tems, Wizkid, and Beyonce were among the winners on the first night of the NAACP Major Awards 2023 virtual ceremonies. Now, during the non-televised virtual experience, Queen Bee was named this year's Outstanding Female Artist, while her hit track Renaissance won Outstanding Album. Cuthit took home the prize for Outstanding Soul R&B Song. Now, let me quickly walk you through some of the winners for the 54th NAACP Image Awards. For Thames, No Woman, No Cry was for Outstanding International Song. Erica Campbell for Positive Outstanding Gospel Christian Song. And also Chris Brown featuring Wizkid, Call Me Every Day. Outstanding Duo, Group, or Collaboration for Contemporary. And then Outstanding Soundtrack Compilation Album, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Music from and inspired by Ryan Coogler, Ludwig Göransson, Archie Davids, and Dave Jordan. And that's how we wrap up with entertainment on Hot Edition. My name is Akofa. Alfred, back to you.
You're back at 8 o'clock.
I am back.
At the wind down.
Absolutely.
Did you know that there was another earthquake in Turkey yesterday? In fact, two earthquakes.
You read about that. Very devastating.
6.4 and 4.8 magnitude. Within the space of 3 minutes in between two.
Things are getting scarier by the minute.
The last time we checked, 3 people have been confirmed dead and close to 213 injured, and 2 persons also trapped under the rubble of this latest earthquakes there. But the good news, well, in this case, is that there are no Ghanaians there. Dr. Mohammed Mubarak is the leader of the Ghanaian community in Ankara in Turkey. He gave us an update on this.
And I can understand the students also in Adana, because the earlier earthquake, they also experienced the, so, and because they're a bit closer to, epicenter, so they experienced the aftershock. To move them at the time, but they told us that, okay, the students said they were fine. They wanted to stay in their hostel. There was no problem there. Nothing has been, their hostel hasn't been affected. School is okay. So they just experienced the aftershock. So, so when they said actually problem, then but now with these 2 other strikes, they are calling for help. They want to leave the place, at least to a place where they can have some stability in their lives for some time.
Right.
Yeah, until the situation returns to normalcy.
That's Dr. Mohammed Mubarak, who's the leader of the Ghanaian community in Ankara in Turkey. Thank you so much for staying with us on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Join us same time tomorrow, but stay with us here on 3FM 92.7. There's more coming up. I am Alfred Ocansey on behalf of the rest of the team. Have a good evening.